virtually via Zoom as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I'd like to advise everyone present that this is being recorded and live streamed to the community via the YouTube channel. I'd also like to remind elected members that in order to be recorded as present in the meeting and to be called on for a vote, your camera must be active, and only active cameras are displayed on the YouTube streaming. So we have everyone present except Councillor Dutta, who is an apology. And I think we've got everyone else is present that I can see. Yep, all right. There's no leave of absences. Just to open our meeting, we always acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which the City of Hobart was built, which I'd like to do. And I'd also like to acknowledge the determination and resilience of the Palawa people of Tasmania, who have survived invasion and dispossession and continue to maintain their identity, culture and rights. We have, our last meeting was on the 27th of July, and there are some minutes that have been circulated. Would someone like to, I can see Deputy Lord Mayor's got her hand up, and that's been seconded by Councillor Ewan. I'm going to, given it's a bit procedural, I'm going to see if there's anyone who would like to vote against accepting the minutes. Please raise your hand now. Councillor, Deputy Lord Mayor, if you could put your hand down, please. Councillor Coates, you've got your hand up.
Look, just now might be the time, maybe not, but a lot of these minutes show people coming and going within a minute. Like, for example, the one we're doing now is Alderman Zico left a meeting at 5:46, returning at 5:47. I just wonder if people leave for 30 seconds, I think like myself, I just duck around in the other room to grab a glass of water. Cat jumps up and I quickly turn my camera off. I was just wondering if it's possible not to sort of show that in all these minutes, because I just think it's a little bit silly.
I might ask the General Manager to answer that question. It might be in the regulations.
That's correct, Lord Mayor. The regulations require the minutes to show when people leave a meeting and return. So unfortunately, that's just the way it is. But the regulations.
Yeah. Okay, so I can presume that those minutes have been carried unanimously, because no one has their hand up. So thank you for that. Transfer agenda items. Would anyone like to transfer any of the items on the open or the closed? No? All right. Well, the next item, no communications from the chair and no council workshops have taken place since our last meeting. We do have two questions as part of public question time. So the first public question is from Mr. Brian Core, and I think he's in the waiting room to ask his question. Okay, hello, Mr. Core. You'll need to unmute yourself to ask your question. Mr. Core did provide notice of the question, so I'll invite him to ask it.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay, thank you. My question is to do with building height recommendations, and question relates particularly to the events of July and August last year, 2019, when Alderman Zucco's, I can only describe it as bullying and harassment occurred, along with his accusations of racism and fascism. Now, given the Code of Conduct panel's finding, including one finding is that the panel can only conclude that he, as Alderman Zucco, did these, that's the bullying, harassing and racism calls and fascism, did so with the intention of causing a deleterious effect on Mr. Core and to cause others not to consider any of the arguments of Hobart Not High Rise or Mr. Core. This was at the same time as the poll of electors and the Building Heights recommendations when they came to council, where the vote was a very close 6-5. Now, I understand that elected members have received hundreds and hundreds of emails in the past few hours. That clearly shows that the public is still watching this issue and understands the issues as well, and that they want the issue of Heights revisited. So my question is there a way of bringing the Building Heights recommendations back to council to restore the public's confidence in the council's decision-making process? And if yes, how could this be done?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Kaur. The General Manager will take this question on notice and the Council will provide you with a written response in due course. Thank you for joining us, and if you'd like to continue watching the tonight's meeting, you can do so from the City of Hobart's YouTube channel. Thank you, Mr. Kaur, for your question. Okay, so the second question. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Councillor Ewan's got your hand up.
Yes, I actually had a point of order about that question on notice because I'm not too sure of the relevance bringing up a code of conduct finding or Marty Zuko's comments are in any way related to the question of how height limits can be reintroduced to council. And I guess it's a little bit late now, but I was actually just wondering if the Speaker could retract those comments and just put the question.
Well, the question was circulated by the General Manager and was this afternoon. So basically, I think we had an idea of what was coming. I guess it was seen as a reasonable preamble, but if it had gone on much longer, it would have been probably too long for that sort of introductory remarks. I think we're trying to land on how long you can make introductory remarks before you actually ask your question. Probably 30 seconds to a minute is reasonable. General Manager, did you want to add anything at all?
I need to add, Lord Mayor, that the review of the notice of motion process for asking, sorry, the public question time process for asking questions and the preamble will be going to the Finance and Governance Committee meeting this month for some discussion about that. But I have nothing to add to the answer you've already given.
Okay, so we have another question from Mr. Charlie Renner, and I think the General Manager is going to read this one out.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. And unfortunately, Mr. Renner was unable to join the meeting. That's why I'm reading it.
I'm sorry, I can't actually hear what's being said by the General Manager. Can everybody else hear it?
No, I wasn't sure if that was.
I can't hear it either.
Can you hear me now?
Worse.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Can everyone hear me now?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'll start again and then hopefully we'll get a question. This is a question, Lord Mayor, from Mr. Charlie Renner, as you said. As Hobart City Council under the Local Government Act has the privilege and honour of providing advocacy on behalf of its constituents to state government, will Hobart City Council write a letter to state government in support of the assisted dying bill due to be tabled from the Legislative Council at the end of the month on behalf of those who live within the municipality who wish to see the legislation passed? And Lord Mayor, you have the answer.
Thank you. Thank you for your question.
Which we'll take it on notice.
Tthank you, for your question, Mr. Renner, and we'll take your question on notice and provide you with a written response in due course.
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Okay, item 6 is, Councillor Ewan's hand up.
Sorry to interrupt again. I was just actually wondering that given the straightforward nature of this request and the fact that it aligns with Council's community vision and the positions of members of COTA and other relevant reference groups, and the fact that this matter will be before the Legislative Council before the next cycle of Council and committee meetings is finished, I'd like to move that we simply direct staff to prepare a letter of support to be sent to all members of the Legislative Council.
Okay, we'd need a seconder for that motion. That's seconded by Councillor, oh, was it seconded by Councillor Coates? No. It's seconded by Councillor Sherlock. Sorry, Councillor Coates, were you trying to say something?
Oh, too quick. I was gonna speak to the item.
Oh, I see. Okay. So it's been seconded by Councillor Sherlock. Would anyone like to speak to that motion? Okay. Yes, Councillor Coates.
Look, I guess just to sort of make it a little bit clear here, but get my understanding. My understanding is Mike Gaffney hasn't yet released the actual bill of what he's proposing to put forward, a final version of it yet. So I guess it'd be hard in one sense to put something forward for something that's not yet up. Other than that, I guess I'd make the observation, or two observations. One is that my understanding is the intention of the mover of this legislation is that, and it's likely to be a conscience vote within the parliamentary system. So it's a matter for individuals in the community if they wanted to contact their local representatives at the state government level and at the parliament level. And I guess that feeds into my third point, which is honestly, this just isn't something that a local government should really be advocating for either way. I mean, it's a piece of health legislation, just ultimately we have 29 councils, and you can have 29 different things coming in. I don't know if it will necessarily help the decision makers, and I think members of the community and individuals are best to, if they have their own views on this issue, to act appropriately and contact their representative. And so I wouldn't support us sending something. I think it just muddies the water.
Okay, I've got a hand up from Alderman Briscoe. Alderman Briscoe, you need to
thank you. Look, this is very unusual. A question without notice has generated a motion, which you've accepted. Is this going to be the normal procedure? Because a number of these questions from the public would generate issues. I'm uncomfortable with this. I'm willing to wait for the General Manager's reply to the question without from the public, but to vote on it now seems really strange, and it's like saying, "Oh, let's make an opinion straight away without any qualified advice." Whether it's, I know you do seem to make up the rules as you go, Lord Mayor, but I don't think you should accept motions.
No, I'm sorry, Alderman Briscoe, I'd like you to withdraw that. I do not make up the rules as I go. I take advice on the meeting procedures under the Local Government Act, and motions can be accepted from the floor by me if I decide that that's appropriate. I can ask for them to be put in writing if they're complicated. This one didn't seem complicated, and I thought we could make a quick decision. It's a letter or not a letter, and the council make that decision. So it's within the Local Government Act, and it's not making rules up. So, Alderman Briscoe, did you have anything more to say on the motion?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. We haven't got qualified advice. It's a very divisive issue in the community. I believe what Councillor Coates has just said is correct. If you've got it's an individual conscience thing anyway. So if you've got Councillor Ewan has a view, then she should write to the Legislative Council when the bill, which we don't know what contains in this bill. I did hear a description over the weekend that it was a little bit bits and pieces from all many different legislations around the country. Can you hear me? I don't know what the issue is. Can you hear me, Lord Mayor?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. So I'd have to, even though probably my personal view is that I would support it, I don't think the council should have a view without qualified advice.
Okay, we've got a hand up from Alderman Barakis.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. Look, noting we don't have qualified advice, I think I'm still erring on agreeing with what Councillor Coates said. I think we need qualified advice on this issue. I think as much as we need qualified advice on monetary policy or foreign affairs policy. It's not something that's within our council's remit or within our council's sphere of issues. I think there are issues that fall within overlap boundaries between local, state, federal politics or federal governments, and those are the ones that we need to be working with. Working alongside and collaborating with state and federal governments and the parliaments with. But this is something that really falls pretty clearly within the state government, state parliament's remit. And I think, as Councillor Coates said, I think us jumping into this, as we seem to jump into a lot of issues that aren't council issues, as Councillor Coates said, just muddies the issue further. I think this is something that people have very strong views, and I think there are some valid views on both sides of this issue. It's not a simple issue; it's a very complex issue, and I think for the council to jump in like this, without getting any advice on it, but then again, is it something that we need to be opining on? We've got, I think, more than enough on our plate. I think just muddies the waters, and I think ultimately this is a matter for the state parliament to discuss and the state parliament to make a decision on themselves, and we shouldn't be telling them how to do their job that they're elected to do.
Thank you. Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, okay. Look, I appreciate the question, but I really feel that this breaches our how we should be doing things. It's not about putting, to my mind, a question or like a motion up to just write. I haven't seen the legislation and know that it's complex. It's a complex issue, and whether it's a representative thing to do as part of representing constituents' concerns, that may well be, but this really, I feel, should be going to council's committee or getting advice back from the general manager.
I have a hand up from Alderman Sexton.
Yes, thanks, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, as a practicing general practitioner and somebody who may actually be implicated in this, I don't actually know what's in my day-to-day work. I don't actually know what's in the legislation. I don't know what would be required of me or what the expectations of me as a doctor would be from this legislation. Broadly, I'm supportive of people's right to determine how they die in certain circumstances, but given that I haven't seen the legislation, I've got no understanding at all of how it might affect me as a doctor or my patients or anybody else for that matter. I am not in a position where I can say yes or no to a proposal that we write a letter. Obviously, as I've said in the past, individual aldermen can elected members either individually or collectively can write a letter. So somebody could write a letter of support and ask other elected members to sign it. And that doesn't need to be a council decision, but it has the same effect as a conscience vote in the parliament. Individuals can express a view, but it's not it's not an overall council decision. So I think that's reasonable for people to do, and individuals can organise that. But I certainly am not in a position to say yes or no to a letter tonight, because I really don't know what it means for me, what it means for my patients. It might be a great bill, it might be a terrible bill, I don't know yet. So, as much as I'm sympathetic to the concept of people's right to determine how they die, especially when they're in terrible circumstances, I'd need more information before I could put my name to it.
Okay, so there's no other discussion, so I will go around and see how you'd like to vote on that motion. Deputy Lord Mayor?
Against, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Zuko?
Against at the moment, Lord.
Alderman Briscoe? I can't hear you, Alderman Briscoe, sorry.
Against the motion.
Alderman Sexton,
Against, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Thomas,
Against at this stage.
Councillor Harvey,
Against at this point.
Alderman Barakis,
Against, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Dutta. Oh, sorry, Councillor Dutta's not here, sorry. Councillor Ewan,
For.
Councillor Sherlock,
For.
Councillor Coates,
Against.
and I'll vote against at this point.
So it's lost, Lord Mayor, 2 votes to 9.
Okay, Alderman Sexton, if you wouldn't mind popping your hand down, and Councillor Ewan, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, just an alternate motion that we put this to the appropriate committee.
The question,
Well, Lord Mayor, just to assist, you probably don't need to, because I've taken it on notice and I will report back for the appropriate committee anyway.
okay.
Radio, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so moving on to consideration of supplementary items. There are 2. Someone.
Chairman, Lord Mayor, I'm
Deputy
happy
Lord
to
Mayor.
do that, but we haven't done petitions, have we?
I think didn't I ask? Oh, so are there any petitions, General Manager?
No, Lord Mayor.
Okay, so supplementary items moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by, would someone like to second that? Alderman Barakis. And given that's a procedural matter, I'm just going to see if anyone wants to vote against consideration of those supplementary items. Raise your hand. Okay, so there's no raised hands, so declare that carried unanimously. Item 8 is indications of pecuniary or conflicts of interest. Do any elected members wish to indicate an interest in any item appearing on the open council agenda? No raised hands. So moving on now to acting as a planning authority. And I'll invite the chair of the City Planning Committee, Councillor Burnett, to open item 9.1.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I move for approval for 26 Lower Jordan Hill Road, West Hobart, partial demolition, 5 multiple dwellings, landscaping and fencing.
I think I saw Councillor Sherlock's hand up, but it's not anymore. Oh, it is? Yeah, okay. So seconded by Councillor Sherlock.
Lord Mayor, this is for 5 dwellings on a very large block on the lower aspect, southern aspect of Lower Jordan Hill Road. It's considered under or against the performance criteria for general residential zone development standards, Road and Railway Assets Code, Parking and Access Code and Landslide Code. Essentially, the 5 dwellings would be behind an already subdivided lot, so a house, the formal house at the front of the lot, and there are. So the 5 dwellings to be built would be conjoined 2-storey, 3-bedroom dwellings with an approximate floor area of 165 square metres, each with east-facing garden terraces and small partially enclosed decks off the upper level bedrooms. There were 7 representations, and the representations were really considering the impacts on neighbours, concerns about the driveway. It's a very, very steep block, and so ingress, but particularly egress from the new driveway, which is wider at the road, was of concern to neighbours, particularly also given cars are rooming up there. The noise generated from cars going to and fro into the development. There's the application has allocated spaces for 14 cars, so two car spots for each of the 5 dwellings, 2 visitor car parks, and part of this development application is 2 car spaces for the existing 26, the existing house. So they're jockey car parking. So it's reasonable to assume that most of the cars would be parked down the base of this block. Concerns about overshadowing, particularly of the Battle Axe house, the house built on the Battle Axe block from Newdigate Street. But in all, the committee felt that this recommendation for approval subject to conditions was acceptable, and it was voted unanimously for it. I think Lord Mayor, there has been in this case quite a lot of thoughtful design as much as possible, and quite a lot of discussion with neighbours who are going to be impacted upon. So a lot of those concerns, I think, have been ameliorated. There's a significant landscape design as well to try and shield some of the impacts, particularly from the Newdigate Street side houses again. So the recommendation is for approval subject to conditions.
Okay, if there's no discussion on that, I can't see any hands raised. So we'll put that item. I'll go around, as it's a planning item, I am going to go around and ask everyone how you vote. So Deputy Lord Mayor?
For Lord Mayor.
Alderman Zuko?
For Lord Mayor.
Alderman Briscoe?
For Lord Mayor.
Alderman Sexton?
For.
Alderman Thomas?
For.
Alderman Harvey?
For.
Alderman Barakis?
For.
Councillor Ewan?
For.
Councillor Sherlock?
For.
Councillor Coates?
For, Lord Mayor.
And I'll vote for. Okay, so moving on to 9.2, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Lord Mayor, this is for 851 Sandy Bay Road. And I'm not sure, Lord Mayor, if I need to move the motion as it stands, or what happens, because we have a request for deferral. So through you to the General Manager, what do I need to do here?
There has been a request for deferral, Lord Mayor, so that effectively becomes a procedural motion. So I think it's quite open for the Deputy to move that procedural motion.
Right, well, I'll move the request, and I might just read it, Lord Mayor, just for the purposes of the recording. So there has been an application, the applicant has proposed a request that the item be deferred. An extension of time to the council has been granted for 42 days from the existing expiry date, which was the 18th of August. And the reasons the applicant has provided for this request are as follows. I would like my traffic engineer to confirm the lines of sight on Sandy Bay Road and to provide a response on how the improvement of the access complies with code E6.7.2P1, to allow a mediation between parties to see if there can be any agreements or proposed changes to the access which would meet their concerns, and to provide time for all parties to seek legal advice to determine if works can occur within a right of way without the landowner's permission. Move that.
Okay, that's been seconded by Councillor Sherlock. Is there any discussion about the proposed deferral? Alderman Briscoe, is that your hand? You'll need to unmute yourself, Alderman Briscoe.
There's a deferral motion, Lord Mayor, so I don't think there's any debate allowed. Is that correct, General Manager?
I don't know. I guess that's right.
That's correct. I think that if it's a procedural motion, it's seconded, it's put.
Thank you, General Manager.
Okay, I will put that then. and go round and get your vote. Deputy Lord Mayor,
For, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Zuko,
For, Lord.
Alderman Briscoe,
For, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Sexton,
For.
Alderman Thomas,
For.
Councillor Harvey,
For.
Alderman Barakis,
For.
Councillor Ewan,
For.
Councillor Sherlock,
For.
Councillor Coates,
For, Lord Mayor.
and I'll vote against.
Lord Mayor, the procedural motions carried 10 votes to 1.
Okay, moving on to item 9.3. Alderman Briscoe, if you wouldn't mind just popping your hand down and just for momentarily, unless you're going to second this. Councillor, Deputy Lord Mayor, 9.3.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. This is 18 to 24 Letitia Street, North Hobart, and adjacent road reserve. It's for partial demolition and new development for 8 multiple dwellings. So moved.
Thank you. That's seconded by Alderman Briscoe.
Lord Mayor, this proposal includes partial demolition of portions of the existing buildings on site, and this is a commercial, has been used as a commercial property for many years. It's a conversion of a building to the rear of the site adjacent to the western boundary to a shared open carport, construction of a new building to accommodate 2 multiple dwellings, alteration to an existing building to accommodate 6 multiple dwellings, and associated fencing, landscaping, car parking and garbage storage enclosure. There were no representations. The performance criteria were inner residential zone development standards, stormwater code, parking and access code, historic heritage code, inundation prone areas code and signs code. This development is for 8 new dwellings in an area which is quite close to the city on Letitia Street. And also it is 2 stories. So it's a fairly uncontentious and probably a development that's really in keeping with existing sizes of buildings around that vicinity. The heritage aspects were deemed to be suitable, and there was a recommendation, or part of the conditioning was to have to retain some of the front door features and have a 25% transparency. So in all, a really beneficial, uncontroversial development for 8 new dwellings in this part of North Hobart.
Okay, Alderman Briscoe, did you want to speak? You just need to go off mute, please.
So, sorry, Lord Mayor, I think I just seconded the motion, but
okay. Don't need to speak. All right, any further? There's no other hands up. So we'll just go around and get your vote on that. Deputy Lord Mayor, how do you vote?
For, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Zuko?
For, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Briscoe?
For, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Sexton?
For, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Thomas?
For.
Councillor Harvey?
For.
Alderman Barakis?
For.
Councillor Ewan?
For.
Councillor Sherlock?
For.
Councillor Coates?
For, Lord Mayor.
And I'll vote for. Oh, so it's a unanimous decision. Thank you. We have one more item, I think, in the...
Yes, item 9.
Item 9.4. Sorry. Thanks, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Yes, no problems. This is for 15 Murrayville Esplanade, Sandy Bay. It is for alterations, which is new decking at the Royal Yacht Club of Tasmania. Move that.
Seconded by Alderman Barakis.
Lord Mayor, this is a waterside part of decking. It didn't receive any representations, and the performance criteria it's considered against is inundation prone areas code. so they're fairly minor alterations, if you like, and it was felt or through what was considered in the report that this was very unlikely to be problematic if there is any sort of inundation. It's interesting. It suggests that the lifespan of this development might be 25 years, and inundation events might occur over 50 years. So if I were doing decking, I'd want it to last longer than 25 years, that's for sure. But that's what we have before us. So I'll move that, and of course it's subject to conditions.
Okay, if there's no discussion on the matter, I'll put that motion. Oh, did I get a seconder? Yes, I did. Alderman Brackus, that's right. Okay, so I'll just go around. Councillor Burnett?
Approve, for Lord Mayor.
Alderman Zuko?
For Lord Mayor.
Alderman Briscoe?
For Lord Mayor.
Alderman Thomas? Oh, sorry, Alderman Sexton?
For Lord Mayor.
Alderman Thomas?
For.
Councillor Harvey?
For.
Alderman Baracus?
For.
Councillor Ewan?
For.
Councillor Sherlock?
For.
Councillor Coates?
For Lord Mayor.
And I'll vote for.
Unanimous.
Unanimous decision. Moving on to item 9.5.
Thank you, Lord
Deputy
Mayor.
Lord Mayor.
Yes, I'll move 14 Byron Street, Sandy Bay, 8 to 8A Byron Street, Sandy Bay, adjacent road reserve. It's for, the proposal is for partial demolition, extension, alterations, change of use to boarding house and associated works in the road reserve. I'll move for refusal, Lord Mayor.
Okay, it's been seconded by Councillor Sherlock.
Lord Mayor, this was discussed at length. The officer recommendation was for approval, subject to conditions, but as you can see before you, there were some concerns, particularly around parking and access and whether that was suitable. Obviously, we have had concerns raised about boarding houses and boarding house developments, particularly in Sandy Bay. We had one fairly recently, which was discussed at length in Alexander Street. But this one is particularly concerning. The committee felt because the demolition which might occur, which is suggested to occur, and then the construction of a 2-storey extension behind the existing dwelling containing 5 bedrooms, bathroom and landing, 4 car spaces to be provided on site, for formalising the 2 spaces off Byron Street in front of the dwelling, and having an additional 2 spaces behind the extension with access via a shared right-of-way on Arena Place. There were significant concerns about actually getting in and out of that right-of-way. It's quite a narrow part at the very end of Arena Place, tucked behind Byron Street, obviously, and Fitzroy Place. So the concerns and the reason for this refusal from committee was that it just didn't seem like it was all of the things could be really addressed even with the conditions. So of major concern. I did have concerns also about the private open space, a very narrow space on the eastern aspect of the house, quite a different way of providing private open space, which is not part of the reasons for refusal, but really didn't augur well for a good development, in my opinion. So you can see the reasons for refusal, and so moved, Lord Mayor.
Okay, Alderman Briscoe.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think the Deputy has outlined very well the concerns the committee had with this. Now, as an alternate housing solution, I have no problem with it being a boarding house. 13 rooms. There is a concern that there are only 3 bathrooms for 13 people. But apparently we've been told today by MIMO that it's allowed. So we're really setting up probably substandard in this day and age level of bathrooms, but apparently that's law. We don't have to have more bathrooms. I suppose more in most of our own current houses, we've probably got more bathrooms than bedrooms. But however, as a housing solution for single people, because that's all it will be for single people, because there will be a limit. I believe that this could be sorted out in mediation part of the appeals tribunal. I did discuss this with the director in terms of why don't we just eliminate the 2 car parks that comes from the right of way, and he said that is paramount to refusal. But in mediation, it may be that the developer might say, well, if you allow me one more parking space at the front in Byron Street, I will eliminate the 2 parking spaces at the rear. There is also concerns about the Heritage House on the corner there, where a really, really tight corner for modern vehicles. But also the end of that street, there is a dwelling which the 2 times I've been there has had vehicles poking out that you wouldn't be able to use the right of way anyway. And the right of way isn't formed anyway. It's a grassy, very steep. So I think that I hate voting against for a refusal, but I think in this case, if it goes to appeal, then the representors and the applicant probably could come to a solution which they all agree with. So I will be supporting the motion for refusal.
Thank you. There's no further hands up, so I'll go around and put this motion. Deputy Lord Mayor, how do you vote?
For refusal, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Zuko?
Against, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Briscoe?
For the refusal.
Alderman Sexton?
For.
Alderman Thomas?
For.
Councillor Harvey?
For.
Alderman Barakis?
Against, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Ewan?
For.
Councillor Sherlock?
For.
Councillor Coates?
For, Lord Mayor.
And I'll vote for.
So, Lord Mayor, it's carried 9 votes to 2.
Okay, so that's the end of the planning items for tonight. And now we'll move on to item 10, which is a motion which has been given notice. Notice has been given of this motion by Alderman Zuko. I'll invite Alderman Zuko to move his motion.
Yes, Lord Mayor. I move that a report be prepared for the Hobart City Council to consider developing a policy whereby all future contracts, consultancies and other major Hobart City Council expenditure to be from Tasmanian-based business for a period of 2 years. Lord Mayor, this has been in the hands of the General Manager for, I think, over 2 weeks, just on 2 weeks. And this is not the first time that such a notice of motion has come forward from an elected member. In the early 90s, former Alderman Diolti put forward a similar motion, which lasted for a number of years, in which the Hobart City Council went down that track. I believe in the current climate, in the current situation, we should do our utmost to support Tasmanian businesses, and I believe if we had a policy, at least for a period of a minimum of 2 years, we could go a long way in assisting Tasmanian businesses. Lord Mayor, some may say, well, we could be paying a premium for Tasmanian based businesses, but at the end of the day, we are all in this situation together, and I feel that we as a council can do our little bit to at least support Tasmanian business. I'll just repeat, this is not the first time such a motion has been supported by council. It's been done in the past, and I'm putting it forward now again in these current times.
So that's been seconded by Alderman Barakis. Alderman Barakis, so Alderman Thomas, did you want to speak?
Yes, thanks, Lord Mayor. Look, I'm very comfortable for a report to come back on this. I would like the report, however, to specifically deal with issues of quality. I accept that we might accept a higher price for the circumstance of supporting a Tasmanian-based business, but I want to look at the issue of quality, the issue of a higher grade of performance. We can increase our price to compensate and to pay for a local trader, but we cannot in any way detract from an appropriate solution which is in every way fit for what we want. That will need to be addressed in a report to satisfy me. There's also obviously ways in which people can get around this, presumably other outfits becoming a subcontractor of a Tasmanian business becomes up as a face. So how do you avoid a shell putting themselves forward as a Tasmanian entity when they're really nothing but somewhere from somewhere else? The third thing is, I imagine that valid as this probably is, we have hundreds, if not thousands, of Tasmanian companies contracting on the mainland, possibly quite more than the number of interstate companies or businesses or sole traders contracting here. We need to be very careful of a backlash in terms of this council in that event. But these are matters that can be covered in a report. As long as they're in the report, we can debate it when the time comes. We shouldn't spend too much time on it now.
Councillor Harvey? You'll need to unmute, Councillor Harvey.
Sorry. Could I just get a clarification from the General Manager? I note that your brief report attached to this notice of motion states that we already have quite a number of processes in place that support local businesses, and we encourage local tenders. And what additional activities would we be looking at here, General Manager?
I don't know about activities, Lord Mayor. As I've said in the report, 98% of the total contracts that we hold at the moment are held by local businesses, defined as being locally owned, operated or employed staff who live locally. So as I said, 98% of our contracts are already local. There are a number of criteria that we apply, Lord Mayor, when looking at a contract, and we would need to discuss those in more detail, but the value proposition is one, a few other considerations as well. So all contracts are heavily weighted towards local businesses, but there are other considerations we take into account as well. So as I've said in the report, Lord Mayor, I think we are already largely there in terms of our contracts. But that 2%, if the council wants to discuss the 2% of contracts that aren't left locally, then we're happy to provide a report on that.
Yeah, well, General Manager, look, when I first read this, I thought that the motion was a bit unnecessary because we've already got it all covered. And when it comes down to certain skills like consultants from the mainland who are a specialist in certain areas, then you have no choice, really, because if it's not available in Tasmania, then you've got to seek whatever you want elsewhere. And I'd hate to think that we would be pushed into using a local service that wouldn't meet the same sort of standards as a mainland service. So I think a policy would need to have some sort of caveat on it. If it's, if the service is available here and it can meet the standard, fine. But if it's not, then we have to seek it where we can. But I'm just a bit unsure why we've got a motion that covers off on all the things we're already doing. So is this superfluous? And we need to spend money on an additional report to say something that we've already got enough information about in the General Manager's report attached to the notice of motion. So I'm still in two minds whether I want another report about what we already do.
Okay, Councillor Byrne, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I have concerns about having whether this is really necessary. Here we have quite clearly 98% of the city's contracts are held by local businesses. Quite clearly, all of us are supportive of procuring any sort of service or anything that we might be able to do locally, and that's first and foremost in the assets managers and the council's staff's minds anyway. And we've heard from the general manager, we have what's written here before us as what is already in place. So I think this is, I don't know if this is just for a headline, but it seems to be quite unnecessary.
Point of order, Lord Mayor.
Yes, Alderman Zuko.
My point of order is I'm not doing this just for a headline, and in my summary I will make that give you some further insight.
Okay.
That is inappropriate.
Okay, that's probably a point of clarification. But
no, Lord Mayor, I take offence to making reference that all I'm doing is putting up a notice of motion for a headline. I actually was contacted by a number of Tasmanian businesses that put this forward to me, and then I did some research, and it was put forward many years ago.
Councillor Burnett, I think Alderman Zuko's taken offence at your suggestion that he's just after a headline. Would you like to withdraw that?
Well, if I must, Lord Mayor, but just suffice it to say that we have officers who have quite a lot of things on their plate at the moment to provide us with the services that we require, and to put on yet another report for I just feel is not necessary. So I'm not going to support this.
Okay, Alderman Barakis.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Before I start, I've just got a question for the General Manager in regards to this. General Manager, if there's issues about, because it's one that I potentially do also share, about, you know, whether or not we need to have a like a catch, you know, where available, so we're not stuck, not able to procure goods because they're not locally and nothing locally is available. As the motion currently sits, would a report that's coming back address things such as that? If we were going to have a policy, would the report address those kind of potential issues?
Well, it could, Lord Mayor. I think what officers do, though, is our natural default position is to try and support local contractors, and we have a whole series of criteria we use when assessing a tender. We could talk you through those. We could talk you through how we actually try and encourage local businesses and industry to get over the line or be successful with tenders. We could talk you through that, but as I said, Lord Mayor, 98% of our contracts are held by local contractors now. So, but we could talk through that.
Thank you for that. Look, Lord Mayor, look, I obviously will be supporting this. I did second the motion. I think, you know, given the economic climate that we're in, given the sort of hit that many of the local businesses have had to cop because of what's gone on, I think, you know, this supporting our local economy should be one of our core focuses right now. I think there's a lot of things that the council is looking at, and I think supporting the businesses that effectively keep our city running should be something that we consider one of our #1 priorities. I think there are, you know, if we already do have a strong policy and a strong record of supporting local businesses, I think that's great. That's fantastic. But I think, you know, with so many businesses, I think we've all seen in the newspaper just recently, they're warning of an impending tidal wave of foreclosures and businesses going bust. I think that there is quite a bit of anxiety in the community at the moment. And if at the very least, this policy just cements or clarifies and provides a bit of certainty to the business community of what the council is doing, even if it fundamentally doesn't change anything. I don't think it comes to any great cost to council, and the potential benefit could be untold. So I think, really we're talking about getting a report on how we might be able to better support the local business community through our procurement. This doesn't seem like something that should be controversial. I think it's a very positive thing that we're doing. It doesn't even seem like an overly political thing. I think there are some obviously potential details that might need to be ironed out, but I think that's all stuff that would come out in the report as is. So look, I'd be supporting it. I'd be encouraging everybody else to support it. I think it's something that could go to great lengths to support the local business community. I think it's something that's a lot more constructive, a lot more productive than just seeking headlines, because we do see plenty of motions that come through council that do that, but I think this one might actually have a result for some people.
Alderman Briscoe.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I don't want to repeat what's been said. 98% of the city's contracts are held by local businesses, but there's no quantum of what it might be 98%, but huge contracts could be awarded to interstate firms. Now, there is a transport problem travelling between states now, so I suspect that we should probably try and aim for 100%. So in this report, I'd like a quantum of how much we've spent on interstate consultants, and it may be our spend could be quite considerable, not 98%, it could be 30% spent on mainland consultants. Just one thing that comes to mind is that we had interesting consultants from the mainland doing parking studies in North Hobart, when we have got very talented firms that could do that work here in Hobart already. So that's one thing that jumps to mind. I think it's a good way to look from the top down. Is there other ways we can support local businesses? I hope that we would have 100%. And there's plenty of talent in Tasmania. And some of our firms will be losing businesses as well because of the travel bans as well. We don't know how long the travel bans will be in. It could be 2 or 3 months, or it could be a year. We don't know. So there'll be plenty of local firms that would, in previous times, be relying on contracts from the mainland as well. So we can help. So I don't think this is a headline. This is certainly a really decent motion to make sure that the imprimatur of the council, the elected members, to the bureaucracy, saying this is what we would hope happens. Now, we might get stuck, and I'm sure Alderman Thomas might agree with me, we might get stuck with competition policy. But however, look, the state government are doing similar things as well as we are. So if the state government won't have any High Court challenges, I don't think a local council will either. So I support and good on Alderman Zurko for bringing this motion forward.
Councillor Sherlock.
Yes, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Yeah, I'm in two minds about this motion. I would like to start off by saying that it's a very lovely motion. It has a nice sentiment, and that's all well and good. I do also recall that I don't actually remember when it was, but I think I read in the Mercury some time ago that, you know, as a council and elected members, we were really not going to agree to any reports and taking any time of council officers writing up reports and doing this and this, doing this and that about reports. But this is actually seeking a report. And while I understand the value of it, yeah, it's really, I'm not really sure if it's an appropriate time considering the current climate. Also, what has already been reiterated by the GM, that we do have a 98% of our contracts at the moment supporting local industry, and that it is, in fact, as you mentioned, our default position. You know, when Alderman Barakis mentioned that during the economic climate at the moment, and supporting our local economy should be our core priorities. I think that's really lovely, and it's a great sentiment as well. But once again, I think the numbers show, as has been reiterated by the GM, 98% of our business already does that as a priority. That is a core priority. So yeah, I'm really unsure about this. Do I want to report? Do I not want to report to already reiterate what we're doing at 98% of the time? Yeah, I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Deputy Lord Mayor. Did you have another question, Deputy Lord Mayor? Oh no, it's gone. Hand's gone. Sorry. So hand down. Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, I have a question to the General Manager regarding one of the points in his report to the notice of motion, and that's regarding the city is currently considering a buy local procurement policy to foster economic development in the city by maximising participation of local businesses and industry in the city's procurement processes. How will that be different to what Councillor Zuko is requesting here? It seems like we're already doing what Councillor Zuko has got in his notice of motion here. Are we just duplicating that, or should Councillor Zuko's motion be rolled into that project?
Well, that's an option for the council. The buy local procurement policy is designed to make sure that we do buy local as part of the recovery from COVID. So it's a matter for Alderman Zuko as the mover of the motion. Like the policy will pick that up in due course when we report back to the council.
Well, just as a comment, I think that would make sense. Rather than have two reports about something, let's just stick with one and save the additional $5,000 or whatever it costs to write a report. Could I have a quote on how much it costs to prepare a report, please, General Manager?
On average, Lord Mayor, it takes the council officer 1 week to prepare a report, so it'll be in the vicinity of $2,000 to $2,500 at officer time.
Okay. Well, I'd rather have one report rather than two duplicate reports.
Councillor Coates.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I'll be brief. I guess as an executive, we will see motions like this come forward periodically, and I, for one, think they're rather good. I support the motion, but I think obviously buying local is important to our community, and it is right that we set a very clear directive from the council, if you like, the board, straight down to the executive, and say, look, this matters to us and our community. And we're giving you, if you like, a formal directive to go and have a look at the organisation and have a look at, I know it says 98%, obviously that's by number of contracts, not by value of contract, and see if we can do better. Just because we're currently at a very high mark, we don't. Obviously, given the COVID situation, it's great that they're already looking at doing a buy local, but I think if it does come from us down to the executive level, that, if you like, gives a little hand cannon for them to sort of go away and really look at it and review it. So I, for one, support the motion.
Councillor Byrne, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It's just a question. I did have my hand up before, but technology got the better of me. Lord Mayor, I'll just throw you to the General Manager. This motion says that a report be prepared for the Hobart City Council to consider developing a policy whereby all future contracts, etc., and other major HCC expenditures to be from Tasmanian-based businesses for a period of 2 years. General Manager, is there, the implication is from the wording of that is that we don't consider things already. Do you think there's a risk for the organisation that that implication might foster concerns about, our purchasing policy?
Lord Mayor, I think we'd address that in a report. I think I understand this, the idea behind or the sentiment behind the motion. I think what's important the council understands in some more detailed way what are the weightings that we use when assessing contracts. So I would be suggesting that maybe the word all could be discussed at a council at the finance meeting, because I think it is important. There are a number of criteria that are used when assessing contracts, and it's whilst I said before our natural position is to default towards local suppliers, there may be extenuating circumstances where maybe a local supplier is not available or not appropriate. But I think it's important the council understands the weightings that we use and what the tender assessment process is.
Thank you.
So if there's no further comments, I've just got a couple of questions and comments before I ask Alderman Zurko to sum up. If I can, General Manager, just ask, so the buy local procurement policy that is currently being prepared, when did we decide to do that?
There's been a few decisions of council taken in previous years, and I think Alderman Zurko's alluded to that, Lord Mayor, in his introductory remarks. We, as officers, we've been working on a buy local policy to bring back to the council, I suppose more in response to COVID, but also as part of the response to some previous council decisions. So we'd like to bring that policy forward. I haven't got a timeline on it, Lord Mayor, but it would certainly be in the next few months.
Okay, so it wasn't that it was in referred to in one of our omnibus decisions or something, was it?
Not that I can recall, Lord Mayor.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think there is obviously a lot of interest in supporting this sentiment, but we also do want to make decisions that do make sense. And the qualified advice from our General Manager is that this policy is being prepared. And I wonder whether Alderman Zurko would consider an amendment to this motion so that it fits in more with the advice that the General Manager has got. I'll just read it out and see what Alderman Zurko thinks. He might not accept it, but so I'm suggesting that the beginning of the motion reads that the buy local procurement policy being prepared, consider a principle that, and then we pick up Alderman Zurko's motion at the point where it says all future contracts. So it would read that the buy local procurement policy currently being prepared, consider a principle that all future contracts, consultants and other major HCC expenditures be from Tasmanian-based businesses for a period of 2 years. So that would then link the fact that this principle that Alderman Zurko is keen to propose fits in with the advice we've received, the qualified advice we've received from the General Manager that the staff are doing this work, and it just makes it a more sort of streamlined decision. So I'm just wondering whether Alderman Zurko would consider that.
No, thanks, Lord Mayor.
Okie doke. All right. Well, I'll listen to the summing up, but I think we've got the work happening, and I don't really see the need to make duplicate reports because it does, when we make reports that sort of cross over each other, it does make life a little bit tricky for the staff in the way they have to report multiple things on the same topic. But I think everyone agrees with the sentiment. But I would have preferred if we could have just, through this motion, given some direction to the staff for the work that they're already doing on a buy local policy. Thank you.
Lord Mayor, the late Barry Fisher taught me one thing, that if it's a council directive, it gets done, and make sure it gets done the way council wants. We are the elected members who, when we can, direct the General Manager to go ahead and do something. Now, even Alderman Sexton at times is ensured that the right wording is in the motion or the amendments. We always go across and dot the I's, and over the years, each elected member that is here present has ensured that well, we better make sure that's in the motion, and it's very, very correct. At the moment, the council hasn't got a policy. It's something that maybe the general manager has been considering or been working on behind the scenes. That's fine. I've never discussed this with the general manager. The general manager's never discussed it with me. There's been a number of things said. You know, this is a lovely motion. It's not about a lovely motion. You know, and I, you know, someone go ahead to set up a shell company to ensure that they get Tasmanian business. Like, really, I don't live in the shoddy world. I live in the world of reality. You know, I think we'd pick someone just set up a shell company to do business. What you know, like I understand what the general manager is saying in the way the principles are in our City of Hobart trade and tenders and everything like that. But at the end of the day, it's not a council directive, it's not a council policy whereby we want to ensure that Tasmanian businesses are given preference. And it brings me to the point, and this was the point made by Alderman Briscoe about the parking report in North Hobart. It was actually, sorry to say this, Alderman Briscoe, but it was the precinct plan in North Hobart where the tenders went to a Victorian-based company. And I find that absolutely amazing when we have quality people here in Tasmania that could have done that work. But also the other one that went to a mainland company was the car parking report. We had a report to overlook the car parks in the city. And again, that one went to the mainland, and we have very good quality people here in the state. Now, I have no qualms that we may look at Tasmanian
30
businesses.
seconds, Alderman Zuko.
Yes, I have no qualms. We look at Tasmanian business and how we look at procuring them. But when you've got two reports in recent times that have gone to mainland companies that we could have done here, that concerns me, and that's part of the reason why I've put this forward. Right? It's not for getting publicity. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go around and get your vote. And Councillor Burnett, can you put your hand down, please, just so we've got a clear screen. So I'm going to go around and get your vote. Deputy Lord Mayor, how do you vote?
Against, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Zuko, how do you
For
vote?
Lord Mayor.
Alderman Briscoe, how do you vote? Yeah, Alderman Briscoe? We can't hear you.
I've said it 3 times now.
Now we can hear you. Yeah.
Motion. Thank you.
Alderman Sexton?
For Lord Mayor.
Alderman Thomas?
For.
Councillor Harvey?
Against.
Alderman Barakis?
For.
Councillor Ewan?
Against.
Councillor Sherlock?
For.
Councillor Coates?
For Lord Mayor.
And I'll vote against.
It's carried, Lord Mayor, 8 votes to 3. 7 votes to 4.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the City Infrastructure Committee, the Hobart Municipal Emergency Management Plan. I'll invite Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, I'll move the item.
Seconded by Alderman Barakis. Discussion?
Yeah.
Any discussion?
I'll just give an intro, Lord Mayor. So this is the Hobart Municipal Emergency Management Plan update. The current version of the City of Hobart's management plan, issue 10, was approved by the State Controller, the Police Commissioner Darren Hines, in April 2018. The plan's required to be reviewed by the Municipal Emergency Management Committee every 2 years. So this is the next draft of that. So the amended plan was endorsed by the Hobart Emergency Management Committee in March 2020. And this updated draft emergency plan is now being presented to the council for endorsement. And then once endorsed, the plan will be submitted to the State Controller for approval and subsequent distribution. So these are very important documents, Lord Mayor. A lot of energy and effort goes into them, and it's what we use at critical times in Hobart. So this is the latest version that needs to be signed off by us before it moves forward.
Okay, I can't see any hands up, so I'm going to put the motion, and I'll just actually see if there's anyone who'd like to vote against this item. Please raise your hand. Okay, there's no votes against, so that's passed unanimously. We're moving now on to the Community Culture and Events Committee. Item 12 relates to the 2020 Myer Hobart Christmas Pageant. I'll invite Councillor Sherlock to move this motion.
Yes, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I'll move the motion and then do a bit of a summary if you like.
Okay, it's second by Councillor Ewan.
Thanks very much. So the Myer Hobart Christmas Pageant is a complex event, being the third largest event that the City of Hobart delivers, involving 2,500 participants from 68 separate entries, travelling on a 1.2 kilometre route along Liverpool Street from Argyle Street, turning into Harrington Street and then turning into Collins Street, concluding at Argyle Street. The delivery of major events in a COVID-19 environment now require the implementation of a number of protocols to monitor and support staff, participant and audience health. Due to the scale, complexity and nature of the Myer Hobart Christmas Pageant, addressing COVID-19 government restrictions would be expensive and it would also be logistically difficult. In addition, there would possibly have a negative impact on the audience's experience of the event. Planning for the pageant requires a long-led timeframe, and while there are currently no cases of community transmission of the virus in Tasmania, there remains a high degree of uncertainty surrounding public safety and what the conditions are likely to be in November 2020. An alternative delivery model, such as a limited seated audience or holding the event in another venue, such as at an oval or a park, defeats the purpose of bringing people into the city to mark the beginning of the Christmas shopping period. A business consultation undertaken by the city has revealed a desire for activation and marketing opportunities to help businesses and the community recover from recent COVID-19 related lockdowns. With the above in mind, it is proposed to cancel this year's pageant and postpone the 40th anniversary celebration until 2021. It is further proposed that alternative city centre activations and opportunities for the business community during the Christmas and summer period take place. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you for that. I've got a hand up from Alderman Briscoe.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just a question to the General Manager. The 70,000 for block parties, will that be on a suburb by suburb basis, or will it just be Battery Point and South Hobart, for example?
Look, I think I might defer to Mr. Short, though, Lord Mayor, on that, just for answer to that.
Mr. Short?
Lord Mayor, through you, at the moment that money is not allocated per suburb or for the inner city. It's largely going to be on a first come, first served basis.
So where's the equity in that? Because obviously there's going to be, I do worry that a lot of money is spent in South Hobart, and Lena Valley and outer Newtown often miss out. So when we advertise this, I think it's not first in, first served. I think you have to wait for the applications to come in and then try and be equitable about it. I don't think we should change the motion, but first in, first out would to me could lead to an inequitable outcome. So I'm hoping Mr. Short will keep that in mind when the applications come in. I would be worried if it was first in, first served.
Hand up from Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It's another question through you, Lord Mayor, to Mr. Short, and I couldn't actually attend the meeting, so it was probably discussed at length. Whilst it's really sad that COVID has another victim in one of our premier events, the pageant, which so many children in particular, but also many communities have a presence in and have done so for many years. I'm just curious to know how easy it will be to crowd manage the block parties. I imagine that you would have thought about this, that your team, Mr. Short, would have thought about this quite a lot, but is it not possibly a difficult prospect to bring it down to that sort of granular level?
Lord Mayor, through you, obviously the state government has a mandated maximum number of people at the moment for a gathering outdoors or a gathering indoors. The team would work with the successful group of businesses to work with them on making sure they have a up-to-date and appropriate COVID-safe plan. So it would certainly be part of our role in auspicing that funding to make sure that there was an appropriate COVID-safe plan and a crowd management plan in that case. And obviously, Lord Mayor, we're learning a lot through the current processes for Salamanca Market.
Deputy Lord Mayor, did you want to say anything, or is that's it?
No, I think that that explains it to the best, or to my satisfaction. Thank you.
Thank you. If no one else has got any further comment, I wouldn't mind just asking a quick question myself, a quick couple of questions to Mr. Short. Just in relation to, there is, in addition to this funding for Christmas business promotion sort of block parties, my understanding is there's also an additional amount of allocation for grants for Christmas Carol events. Can you just confirm how much is available for that?
Through you, Lord Mayor, one moment. The grants are limited to $15,000 per organisation. If you just bear with me, I just will check. $75,000 for the Carols program, Lord Mayor.
Okay, so in addition to potentially street parties for Christmas, we're going to have carols for Christmas as well. So there'll be the two different programs.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, and the and those events, where are the major ones of those Christmas Carol events in the past? Where have they been?
Through you, Lord Mayor, I believe there's been significant activities for Newtown, Mount Stewart. You're testing me though on where else they've been. There have been some smaller ones, and it does vary from year to year. But if memory serves me correctly, it's Newtown, Mount Stewart. And
Leetna Valley has a big one too, I think, don't they? Yeah. Okay, no, good. Well, I think, yeah, there's certainly lots of generosity and grants going to be available for both business events and Christmas Carol events. And I think it'll all be, you know, if it can be managed with the social distancing, I'm sure people will really appreciate the investment we're putting right throughout the city in these events. So certainly supportive. Okay, so would anyone else like to speak on this, or would you like to sum up it all, Councillor Sherlock?
No, that's fine. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Okay, so if anyone, would anyone like to vote against this motion? Please raise your hand. Okay, so there's no votes against the motion, so that's passed unanimously. Moving on to item 13, which is the Housing with Dignity Reference Group Review. Councillor Sherlock.
Yes, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. So I'll just put the motion and then give a brief overview if you like.
Yeah, seconded by Councillor Ewan.
Thank you very much. So on the 18th of February 2019, the Council approved the establishment of a Housing with Dignity reference group comprising community members with lived experience of homelessness or extreme housing stress. Alderman Thomas was appointed as chairman of the group, and Councillor Ewan was the second elected representative, and the group was also co-chaired by a community member with lived experience. The group has been meeting on a monthly basis since April 2019 until March 2020, when the COVID-19 reduced the frequency of the meetings. The group has also had representatives actively participating in the Greater Hobart Homelessness Alliance. The group has provided an opportunity for deeper consultation with the community experiencing or having previously experienced homelessness or severe housing stress. This reference group has provided a mechanism for these often ignored voices to be heard, and an opportunity to advocate and lobby state and federal governments for improved housing opportunities and homelessness support. The group has developed key action areas that include media advocacy, data collection, breaking down the stigma, and consideration of community housing homelessness shelter models. The group has been very active in advocacy work over the past 12 months with radio interviews, print media articles, and written submissions to state and federal inquiries into affordable housing and homelessness issues. The group has also developed initiatives for Homelessness Week, undertaken a storytelling project, and actively participated in the Greater Hobart Homelessness Alliance. The core members have demonstrated passion and commitment to the group and have indicated a strong desire to continue. They consider that they continue to have a strong role to play in providing a voice for people without a home and people living in housing stress. It is considered that there is a strong need for this group to be continued and to ensure that the voice of the people with lived experience is heard and considered when developing initiatives or strategic documentation. It is very important that a community member of the group participates in the Greater Hobart Homelessness Alliance, again, to ensure that we hear the voice of people who have or are currently experiencing homelessness. And at the committee meeting, we were also advised that Alderman Thomas won't be the chair, and we called for nominations, and my memory serves me well, Councillor Dutta had actually signalled his intent to nominate to be part of this reference group. Thank you very much, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sherlock. Hand raised from Alderman Thomas.
Yeah, thanks, Lord Mayor. I'd just like to preface this by saying that I thought that the summary provided by Councillor Sherlock was excellent. You encapsulated exactly what this group has done. I'm surprised how effective this group has been. It's effective because the elected members, that includes Councillor Ewan and myself, leave our rank and title at the door, and normally we come in and we provide support and encouragement for some people who have been marginalised, in some cases for many, many years. In a co-chair position, soon after it was developed as a group, I effectively allowed the other co-chair, Kate Kelly, who's the Hobart Citizen of the Year, to run the meetings, preferring to open the meetings and sum up where we were going and where council could support. This is a group for the people and of the people. If you decide to stand to be involved with this, and I hope Councillor Ewan agrees with me, don't do it for any other reason other than you want to learn more about homelessness. Don't do it to be re-elected in 2022. Don't do it for publicity, because I seek and sought no publicity whatsoever, including opening Homelessness Week last week without a media release, without any Facebook. The last thing we should do is tread over the paths of these really strong people. The chair at the moment, the young chairwoman, is 20 years old and was homeless at 15. This is a very special council group. It's the only one of its type in the country that's supported directly by a city council. And I just implore people, join the audit committee, join the Mount Wellington Trust. Don't join this one unless you know what you're going into. take your tie off at the door if you're a guy, and your scarf if you're a lady, perhaps, or whatever you wear in that sense. But don't go into this meeting to chair the meeting or to be in control, because this is not our group. It's the group of the people. And it's been a privilege to be involved with it.
Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thanks, Lord Mayor, and I appreciate the work that's been done by all members of the committee. I think the summary, obviously, or the introduction was spot on, and it's certainly lifting beyond its weight. You know, like there's so many good things that come out of this. Last week, I went with you, Lord Mayor, to Homelessness Week event, which was looking at I Am Somebody, which had various stories, really interesting, heartbreaking stories from members who are involved with that group, who have dealt with homelessness and all of the things that do occur with that. Look, I appreciate the work that Alderman Thomas has done, and obviously Councillor Ewan and other members of the committee, and I take on board what Alderman Thomas has said about the passion that's required for this. I would like to move an amendment that Councillor Ewan be elected to be co-chair of the meeting. I understand that Alderman Thomas is stepping aside, so I'd like to move that as an amendment as part of this. I'd also like to be involved, time permitting, and I'm yet to see when the meetings are, and obviously there will be good ongoing representation by elected members. So I'll put my name forward, subject to availability, Lord Mayor.
I need a seconder for the amendment on Councillor Ewan as the co-chair. Councillor Harvey. Okay, we might just, I think we've got one more comment from Alderman Zuko, so I might just do that and then we'll do the amendment and then the substantive. Alderman Zuko.
Yes, Lord Mayor, look, over the years, there's been a lot of people doing a lot of work for the homeless situation. You know, go back years ago, there's, you know, the late Alderman Darlene Haig, even myself, I put forward, Alderman Briscoe reminded me, I put forward to have the first street workers on the streets. I commend any person that helps and does assist any person who is going through homelessness or in a vulnerable situation. And I actually commend Alderman Thomas for his hard work that he's done thus far. But at the end of the day, there's always a number of people that want to put their hand up. And Alderman Barakis has been discussing with me. He's interested in also putting his hand up here. And if I had the time, I'll put my hand up just like the deputy has. But I've got a lot on my plate. I actually cook two days a week, as people know, for the homeless. So I'd like to nominate Alderman Barakis. So far we've got Alderman Barakis, Alderman Dutta, and Councillor Ewan. I think that's fantastic.
Thank you. So my understanding is we've got item 3 is Councillor Dutta be nominated to the Housing with Dignity Reference Group, and we've also got Alderman Barakis to be in that, and then item 4 was a separate amendment around the co-chair of Councillor Ewan. Is that and if so, can I just get a seconder for Alderman Zuko's addition of Alderman Barakis in item 3?
Lord Mayor, I also put my name forward.
Okay.
I'll add Alderman Burnett as well to that as well. I did mention Alderman Burnett. Sorry, I missed.
Okay, so we've got the three.
Sorry, the Deputy Lord Mayor, not Alderman Bennett. Sorry.
Councillor Burnett, yeah.
Just a question, Lord Mayor. Is Councillor Burnett happy to accept all of those in and deal with it as one amendment?
Yeah, yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, so
and the seconder?
And the seconder was Councillor Harvey, happy with that? Okay, so we've got that as one amendment. Now I've got a hand up from Alderman Barakis.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I suppose just a question to start off with. I imagine that there's no issue with the addition of like there's no issue as far as the numbers of people jumping on this committee, because I think can I just confirm that? I would hope that wouldn't be.
Mr. Short, would you like to take that one, or Councillor Ewan maybe, or Alderman Thomas, who would like to take that?
I'm quite to just quickly respond to that.
Yes.
There isn't, as I understand it, a formal issue with as many of us going along to the meetings as we like. However, I would stress that this is a group of very marginalised, vulnerable people who are not used to being in a room with people like us and bureaucrats, and occasionally attendance numbers, like they fluctuate a lot. Like sometimes we'll have half a dozen reference group members come, sometimes there'll be a lot more. And I guess, yeah, so from that sort of perspective, it could be sort of seen as a bit intimidating if there were too many of us elected members in the room, as well as the council staff that need to attend to this. So I guess, yeah, just from that perspective, I mean, yeah, it would be great. I mean, at the moment, the meetings, you're able to come via Zoom as well. So I guess everybody's welcome to come along to those, and that's quite non-threatening and non-invasive. But I guess, you know, a lot of these people either are currently or have experienced quite recently homelessness and housing. So, yeah, I just consider that when nominating and considering coming along to these meetings.
Look, thanks for that, Councillor Ewan. I think that is something that I will take into consideration. I think, like you said, for the Zoom meetings, it might not be as much of an issue, and when we do start going back to normal, it might be something that we do have to consider. I think just because I think it's something that, you know, and especially you yourself have been very active within on this issue, and I think everyone here is it's an issue that everyone here is very not interested in, but very, very passionate about, because I think we do have our political disagreements about what the best policies are to address these kind of issues, but ultimately there are real people that are being affected by this. And you know, my understanding of the group, I haven't attended a meeting myself as yet, but it's very much one for us to sit down and listen to these people, rather than talk to these people about all the wonderful things we're looking at doing, or the wonderful things that we want to do, or what the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do is. It's for us to sit there and effectively let them tell us what's going on. Because I think, you know, with all the politics and the, you know, planning policy and housing policy and all that, you know, I think I was reminded of it just last week when I think it was Tuesday night when we had that great big storm and the power went out and everybody was freezing cold, and we had our little gas heater inside the house, and we turned it on and we're freezing in every single room other than where that little heater was, and I was feeling all sorry for myself. And then looked on my phone and there was pictures of people huddled in the mall, you know, trying as hard as they could to stay warm on a night like that. And you got to remember that there are real people out there that are really struggling. So look, I think it's something I am very, you know, I'd be very grateful to be part of this, just so I can, you know, hear from the people that are out on the streets, are the ones that are at the other end of all these policies and discussions and debates and rhetoric that we do go through. So I think it's a really important thing that we're doing, and I congratulate the work that the committee has done, and Councillor Ewan and Alderman Thomas have done up to date, and I hope that would continue. So look, I'd be happy and honoured to be part of this group, and I think, yeah, once again, it is something for us to sit down, shut up, and listen to the issues that these people are dealing with.
Okay, I think the next hand up is Alderman Thomas.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. Look, it's fantastic to see that something that I put forward to council and was accepted and was put forward as a unanimous resolution is now got almost a third of the council putting their hand up to be involved. It's
Sorry, Alderman Thomas, you have spoken on this already.
Okay.
Oh, but you're
All right,
speaking on the amendment.
Let me
You're speaking on the amendment. That's all right.
I will. My view is clear. We don't need to, on the amendment, it's great to have as many people who want to be involved as possible, but Danielle and Kimbra that run very well the administration together with Tim Short. I think on those days, folks, when we only get 4 people from the community, if we ended up with 4 aldermen, 2 council officers, I think it may look a bit too top heavy. I'm very comfortable. I don't even know whether or not we need to have an actual elected member made as a chair. I think if we took all of the people who are putting their hands up to be involved with it, I think that's fantastic. But I think we'd need to have a protocol that a certain number attend on each occasion. And if that way, Lord Mayor, we would get a really good understanding by the elected members of the issues, and everyone who wants to be involved would be involved. So I'd put that forward as a solution.
Okay, so I'm not sure. Alderman Zuko and Councillor Burnett have got their hands up. Do they want to ask another question? Both have spoken. Did you want
there was a question. Yeah, sorry, it was a question. If I might go first, sorry, Alderman.
No, I think it's just yourself. Alderman Zuko's put his hand down.
Look, I think the item 13 part 3 says, and a further nomination be called. So if there's only one, is there clarity? Can there be some clarity as to whether there is just one more position available through you to Mr. Short?
Lord Mayor, through you, ultimately it's a matter for the council. Respectfully, we were considering that 2 elected members would be the ideal number of elected members participating in the group at any one time, for the reasons that Alderman Thomas and Councillor Ewan have already stated, really just about trying to ensure some balance. And so that's why the original report did talk about seeking 2 nominations. But as I said, ultimately it is a matter for the council.
Yeah, look, Lord Mayor, based on that, look, I'm happy to withdraw my interest or my nomination if that makes it a bit easier, because I think, obviously Councillor Dutter's not here and he had expressed interest at the committee. So I'll withdraw that, but listen in interest. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, I'm going to put the amendment, which was to add Councillor Barakis to be nominated as well as Councillor Dutter, and for Councillor Ewan to be nominated as a co-chair of the group. So I'll go around and see how you would like to vote on that amendment. Deputy Lord Mayor?
For, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Zuko?
For, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Briscoe?
For, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Sexton?
For, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Thomas?
For.
Councillor Harvey?
For.
Alderman Barakis?
For.
Councillor Ewan?
For.
Councillor Sherlock?
For.
Councillor Coates?
For, Lord Mayor.
And I'll vote for. That's unanimous, is the amendment. So the substantive motion as amended, I'm just going to see if anyone would like to vote against.
The Deputy Lord Mayor still got a hand up, so that's not a vote again.
Okay, no, it's not. Okay, would anyone like to vote against?
Can I just sum up? Is that okay?
Oh yeah, sure. Sure. Sorry, Councillor Sherlock.
Yeah, look, I won't take up too much time, but I did just want to say thank you to everybody for, this is, as Alderman Thomas pointed out, one of the first of its kind, and it's really great that we together as a council, we support this, and I really do commend the work that Councillor Ewan and Alderman Thomas have done on this. And I also really want to take this opportunity to also sincerely thank our Hobart City Council staff and those part of the Community Life Division that do also make this possible as well. So thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you, Councillor Sherlock. So would anyone like to vote against this motion? Please raise your hand. Okay, so there's no raised hands. That's passed unanimously. We're now moving on to the Economic Development and Communications Committee. Item 14, I'll invite Alderman Thomas to move the motion.
I'll move the motion on the books, Lord Mayor. If someone can second it, then I'll just speak briefly to it.
Yeah, Councillor Ewan, seconded by Councillor Ewan.
Yeah, look, business events presented a strong submission to the committee. Director Short has advised the committee that the 53,728 is a reasonable figure from the original figure of around 104 to 106,000. It's based on obviously a reduced activity in terms of funding bids or bids being put forward internationally and interstate. But the activity that was put forward that has been occurring over the last 5 or 6 months and the predicted activity is seen fit by council officers and by the committee as being justified for this reduced funding on this occasion.
Okay. Councillor Harvey, you've got your hand up.
Oh, look, that was to second it. I think I might have missed the second. Who seconded it?
Councillor Ewan. Okay, there's no discussion. So I'll see if anyone would like to vote against that motion. Would anyone like to vote against? You just raise your hand. Okay, there's no raised hand, so that has passed unanimously. Move on to item 15. Alderman Thomas.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. I'll put the motion on the books. Seek a seconder.
Seconded by Councillor Ewan.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. Look, this is a very few lines on what took up around about 100 pages in a detailed 1-hour workshop. We traditionally do thank the staff. On this occasion, the staff have done an exemplary job contacting businesses, speaking for between 5 minutes and an hour on some occasions to over 700 businesses. They were the light on the hill in terms of the council at an officer level during the early parts of COVID. That's enabled us as a council, Lord Mayor, to get a pitch or an understanding of the economic fabric of our city that realistically, since the ABS stopped taking localised data 10 years ago, we haven't had. We actually do have a very good understanding now of the range of businesses in the city and the separate and diverse impact that this pandemic has had. I think it's really relative for us, and it's a piece of further work that's going to be needed to understand the proportion of employees that are engaged in state, local and federal government in the city, taking into account each department or agency of the state and the federal government, and areas such as UTAS, although I'm a little bit more reserved on that, because this is an area that will, in all respects, survive COVID-19 and what it can throw out. And we as a capital city, this is the city of the public service in the state, and we are alone in this. Our statistics and our recovery going forward is very different to what's happening in Launceston, Burnie, Devonport, and certainly the smaller towns and cities around the state. The concept that the officers have put forward under Director Short in terms of a guiding principles document, I think is very sound. I think that the way in which it points to evidence-based, being flexible and adaptable, focusing on need and adding value, does encapsulate exactly what those businesses, entities and individuals told the council during this period. The council's responded well as an operating unit. There's only one change that I'd like to propose, Lord Mayor, to the 4 recommendations, is that economic development will always have an impact on the city, or could have an impact on the city in terms of funding requirements, or indeed the councils need to know exactly where it stands from month to month, year to year. And that's why I think we ought to realistically add the Chairman of Finance to the group, the Lord Mayor and myself, in terms of item 4. But other than that, I commend the report to the council. I think we have an excellent base, an excellent set of data to build on, and build on it we will.
Thank you. Is the seconder, who was the seconder of that? It was Councillor Ewan, wasn't it? Are you happy with that addition, Councillor Ewan?
I think, Lord Mayor,
Oh.
it might need to be taken as an amendment.
It has to be, because it's come our committee recommendation.
That's right.
I see. Okay, no worries. So someone else might need to move that, Alderman Thomas. Alderman Sexton.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I've got a comment and then to move an amendment regarding, it is related to the economic recovery, but it's also relates to the relationship between the economic recovery and the health, not only of Tasmania, but also of our city. We read today in the Mercury that there's an insolvency expert who's predicting that there'll be a tsunami of insolvencies in Tasmania in the near future. And I think most of us would understand that this would add to the already significant downward effect of COVID-19 on our tourism and our arts sectors, both of which were major contributors to Tasmanian prosperity recently. But I think most of us also understand that even before this tsunami of insolvency hits Tasmania, there's growing evidence of widespread financial stress, personal and relationship stress, increased domestic violence, worsening mental health and increased suicides, premature deaths and increased mortality due to increased hospital waiting lists and reluctance for people to seek medical care. And ultimately, of course, the economic consequences of the current Tasmanian response to the COVID-19 pandemic, it may well lead to increased poverty with all the well-known additional morbidity and mortality that's associated with poverty itself. So I guess what I'm concerned about is that the current public health advice driving the Tasmanian government response to COVID-19, to the COVID-19 pandemic appears to be limited to a single question, and that is, how do we prevent COVID-19 infections coming to Tasmania? Now, the obvious answer to that, and you don't need to be a public health physician to come up with that, is close the borders. And the issue for me is that we just have absolutely no clear criteria at all, and apparently no plan about how we deal with that. Many experts agree that a vaccine may be years away. So is the plan simply to keep our borders closed for years? If not, then what is the plan? Unfortunately, as an island state with a small population, our economic future is going to be very dependent on the movement of people between ours and other Australian states. And I believe as the capital city, it's important that we understand the Premier's plan going forward, including the criteria for opening the borders and including his plan for dealing with the consequences of the current methodology, if you like, for dealing with COVID. So I would like to move an amendment that, and I don't know whether I have to foreshadow an amendment if there's already one there, but move an amendment that we write to the Premier and asking him this question: what is the Tasmanian government's plan to ensure that the current measures to prevent death and illness from COVID-19 in Tasmania do not cause greater harm through economic, social and health consequences of these current measures? So I think that we need to understand what is the plan, because it's not just simply a matter of keeping the borders closed until vaccines are not only available, but the entire 20 million or 25 million Australians are vaccinated. That will take years. And if we close our borders for years and we don't address the consequences of the impact of that until it's too late, then we're going to have much worse health consequences, possibly from the treatment than from the disease itself. So we do need a plan. Nobody's heard a plan. And I think as the capital city, we need to ask, what is the plan, not just what is the reaction.
Happy to second that, Lord Mayor.
So I'll just
Seconded by Alderman Briscoe.
Thank you very much, Alderman Briscoe. So I'll just repeat the question. So we write to the Premier and ask the Premier, what is the Tasmanian Government's plan to ensure that the current measures to prevent death and illness from COVID-19 in Tasmania do not cause greater harm through the economic, social and health consequences of these current measures?
Can I just clarify too, Lord Mayor, is Alderman Sexton prepared to include in that amendment the Chair of Finance in Part 4?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
So that'll deal with this one then, Lord Mayor.
I'm happy to include that too, Lord Mayor. Thank you.
You're on mute, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Sherlock.
Oh, sorry, Lord Mayor, I put my hand down. I actually had my hand up after Alderman Sexton had put his motion to second it, but that's okay. I'll put it down.
Alderman Barakis.
Yes. Thank you, Lord Mayor. And thanks to the input by Alderman Sexton, I think, especially given his expertise in the field, it's good to hear some of his points that he made. And I think it's, I think, you know, there is talks of, you know, sometimes you hear that, you know, it's just the economy, or it's only economics. I think we are living right now in a very strange moment, because I think we're kind of in the eye of the storm, where, especially in Hobart, there seems to be this sort of calm where things aren't necessarily quite that bad right now. But I think we are very much in the eye of the storm, where I think there's going to be some hard times coming that we're not necessarily prepared for. I firmly believe that this issue and preparing for the recovery and getting and trying to gear our city towards recovery as much as we can in our position as local government should be one of our core #1 priorities right now and for the foreseeable future. I think there's a lot of things that the council likes to talk about and the council likes to discuss, which I think even especially now should be seen as secondary issues. I think this is something that's going to really affect people. And as Alderman Sexton said, you know, there's a lot of talk about the health impacts of the virus and the crisis itself, and they are very real, and I'm not trying to discount that. But I think when people's livelihoods start getting really affected, especially with you know, a number of the government support packages that are always going to be temporary measures, when people start losing houses, losing jobs, losing their livelihoods, the human effect and the human cost of this is going to become very apparent. You know, we will see, I think we already have seen in some states in Australia that have been worse hit. We've seen it in other countries where the suicide rate has gone through the roof, where the people's health outside of coronavirus have had worse outcomes because of the focus on this and because of their inability to you know, either pay for or to get treatment or whatever have you. There's a lot of other externalities that are going to come out of this, and I think this should be one of our core focuses. And look, I completely support the other part of the amendment. I think given the inevitable and obvious budgetary, financial and governance implications of whatever it is we venture into it from an economic recovery perspective, I think it absolutely makes sense that the Chair of Finance is involved in these high-end discussions with the state government. So look, I'll commend the amendment. I'll commend the entire motion. I think this is absolutely crucial that we get on top of this.
Lord Mayor.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. A question through you to the General Manager. General Manager, given the amendment from Alderman Sexton, what discussions have you or your officers already had in light of these concerns with either public health or the health service?
Look, Lord Mayor, we haven't had those detailed discussions with the Premier in the context of Alderman Sexton's amendment. We've obviously had conversations with the state government along the journey on critical things like the Salamanca market and a few other services that we provide, but we haven't had that specific discussion with the government regarding Alderman Sexton's amendment.
Thank you, General Manager. Look, I think this is a really important component of how we as a city, as part of a state, are coordinating or working with our health service partners, and obviously the state government in relation to this. Obviously, the motion itself is looking at that economic recovery, and I commend the work that the officers have done already in contacting the various businesses across the city of Hobart. But you know, it's prescient when you look at works of fiction like Albert Camus' The Plague, and see how there have been so many of these things that have occurred before, which really point to those other societal concerns that may well be ahead of us. And we've obviously had the front page story today in relation to that, and the economic economic downturns, which will impact a lot of businesses. I think what Alderman Barakis has said suggests that this could be not very far away at all. I think it's really important that we, as a city, have as many conversations with public health and the health department and government, DSG, in relation to this, and I look forward to supporting the principle of Alderman Sexton's amendment.
Alderman Zuko.
Lord Mayor, I commend Alderman Sexton's amendment. I think it's absolutely necessary. A couple of months ago, I was actually speaking to an economist who made reference to basically what was in the paper today. I don't think we realise what's happening out there, and there are so many businesses or so many people I've spoken to in business. Even I spoke to a builder today, whose work has practically dried up. Some people have got work on, some people haven't. The hospitality industry, they're all bracing about what may or may not happen with JobKeeper and that. There are so many businesses out there right across the board that are just managing. And I feel that sometime early next year we are going to see that tsunami, and it's not only going to be economic, it's going to be personal. So anything we can do as a city, I think it's very, very important, Lord Mayor. One builder I know, I've actually just given them work. I had jobs to do, but I've just given them work, Lord Mayor, just to help them out. And I think, anything we can do, we should. And I commend Alderman Sexton's amendment, and I'll fully support it.
Alderman Barakis, you've got your hand up again. Is that a question or? No. Okay. Councillor Burnett, your hand's up still. I presume that's going to come down in a sec. Councillor Harvey, your hand's up.
Yeah, Lord Mayor, just a couple of points. I appreciate the inclusion of the flexibility in this, because we don't know basically what it's going to be like and how things will change in time. So I really do appreciate having a degree of flexibility so we can shift if required. And when it comes to some sectors, though, my anecdotes over the weekend with builders and stonemasons and things was that they've been knocking back work because they've got so much at this particular time, because for some reason, as you know, people are concentrating on renovations and things. So the feedback I've had is that particular industry is doing reasonably well at the moment. There's plenty of work for builders and stonemasons and those sort of tradies, but other areas are struggling. And as long as we're focused on the facts and the data, and we know who we should be working with,
and we're directing our efforts towards the appropriate sectors, then I'll be very, very happy. But I think the emphasis is on understanding the situation as it is changing over time. So that flexibility is really important as far as I see. But I'll be supporting the amendment and the recommendation here tonight, and I thank the officers for the energy and effort they've put into bringing this to us.
Okay, there's no other hands up. Can I ask for the amendment to be read out again? Not the, I think we understand the addition of Alderman Zuko in 4. It's this item 5.
Yes, Lord Mayor. The council write to the Premier seeking details of the Tasmanian Government's plan to ensure that the current measures being taken to prevent death and illness do not cause greater harm through economic and health consequences.
Lord Mayor, economic, social and health measures.
Thank you, Alderman Sexton.
Thank you.
Sorry, Lord Mayor, could I have that one more time, please?
Yes, Lord Mayor, that the council write to the Premier seeking details of the Tasmanian Government's plan to ensure that the current measures being taken to prevent death and illness do not cause greater harm through economic, social and health consequences.
Okay, I'm just going to ask Alderman Sexton if he would mind if we take that separately as a separate item.
No, I don't mind at all.
Vote on that separately, because I'm not going to support that amendment. I think the tone of it is all wrong. I mean, we all understand that that there's a huge dilemma here for the Premier and the state government in trying to work out when they open the borders and how they deal with this. And the tone of the amendment suggests that that there is something currently wrong with the strong focus on the the decisions being driven by public health, because I think what we're seeing in Melbourne is exactly what does happen if you start trying to sort of deal with all of those other interests that are saying open up. We've got economic issues, we've got social issues, we've got other things happening, and then so under the pressure, which is coming from a range of lobby groups at the moment, I think something very similar has sort of come from the Tourist Industry Council. I mean, the pressure of that leads to an potentially earlier opening or relaxation of restrictions, and then we get an outbreak, and then we have a Melbourne which is then even more serious for the economic, social and social impact of the pandemic. So I mean, I think this is I think the Premier is thinking about these dilemmas every day, and I don't think we need to sort of necessarily add to the sort of the call for what is a very difficult set of decisions to be made, because I think the criteria is to try and prevent death and illness, and prevent a second wave that it would have devastating economic impacts. But that, as far as the plan goes, I mean, I think that's incredibly difficult for them to brief us on, or even be absolutely sure of, because it is a day-by-day watching brief, and they need to be incredibly nimble and see what's happening in other states. So I just don't think that I'm willing to support that part of the motion, but very happy to support the substantive part of the motion. So for that reason, we'll put, I think, 1 to 4, and 4's been amended to add Alderman Zuko. Is that correct? So would anyone like to vote against items 1 to 4? There's no hands raised, so that's passed unanimously. And now I'll put the amendment, or item 5, which is the writing to the Premier from Alderman Sexton, and just go around and see how you'd like to vote. Deputy Lord Mayor.
Lord Mayor, I really need some sort of explanation from Alderman Sexton in relation to what you have said, because I feel that's not really what I'm seeing. So I just wonder, through you, Lord Mayor, whether we could have some sort of explanation from Alderman Sexton on this.
Explanation, yes. So in terms of what, further to his already, so a sum up of his amendment? Some further comments?
Lord Mayor, I'm happy to provide a point of explanation. So my point of explanation isn't to, my point of this isn't to criticise the state government in any way, shape or form. The point of this is to understand the government's thinking. What we are getting at the moment is a very, relatively simplistic approach, and that is public health advice is that we close the borders. My concern is that I'm not sure what the question is that's being asked of the public health specialists, and I am concerned that it's not being asked. The broader question isn't being asked, or if it is, and there is a plan, then that's fantastic. But I think it's necessary for us to understand it, and if there isn't a plan, then I'm hoping that this question will prompt the development of a plan, because it's not going to be simply a matter of keeping the borders closed or making decisions about COVID-19 in isolation for the next 2 to 3 years, because that's how long it's going to take for the population to be fully vaccinated. There's going to have to be a plan which takes into account the impact of COVID-19 breakouts, and that being balanced against the impact of, continuing to doing what we're doing now and just allow the economy to shut down and people's livelihoods to be lost. I mean, I know one of my colleagues at the general practice that I work, a 43-year-old patient of hers committed suicide because his business was decimated. He couldn't support his family, he couldn't support himself. He became so depressed he killed himself. So I guess that's my point. There is way more at stake here than just whether or not we catch COVID-19. And what I'm interested to know is whether there is a plan to manage that, and if so, what that plan is, and how can we as a capital city contribute to that plan. I don't think we want to stick our heads in the sand and say, because we're okay now, because there's no COVID-19 down here like there is in Victoria, that everything's going to be okay for us, because it isn't. And we need to understand what it is that we can do as a capital city to make sure that there is this broad balance, if you like, between the disease and its treatment, because we are heading towards a situation where that old adage about the treatment being worse than the disease is rapidly approaching. And I think we have to bear that in mind. And it's not a criticism of anybody, and I know full well that they must be agonising over this, but we're not hearing anything about it. And every time a question is asked along these lines of the Premier, he simply says he's taking public health advice. But that public health advice is going to be premised on the question that's asked. And if we ask a different question, then we might get a more understandable answer.
Okay, so I'm going to go around and put that item 5 now. Deputy Lord Mayor, how do you vote?
For, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Zuko?
For, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Briscoe?
For, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Sexton?
For, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Thomas?
For.
Councillor Harvey?
For.
Alderman Barakis?
For.
Councillor Dutta? Oh, sorry, Councillor Ewan?
For.
Councillor Sherlock?
For.
Councillor Coates?
For, Lord Mayor.
And I'll vote against.
So it's carried, Lord Mayor, 10 votes to 1.
Okay, so we now move into the...
Substantive.
Oh, okay, substantively. We're taking them separately. We've taken them separately, though. I think that was the point.
We've taken them separately. Now got to put them together.
Together, that's a substantive item.
Lord Mayor.
That's a substantive motion, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Thomas.
Yeah, thanks, Lord Mayor. Look, I'm not going to sum up so much as I'd like to say that I think it's been a very valuable debate, and I would like to say that 5 and the first 4 do join well together. Family violence in Victoria, and I speak from someone whose partner is looking after a large section of the southeast of Melbourne, has trebled since COVID-19. So we're actually seeing family violence at an unprecedented level of first response in the community. I would hope that in this resolution that we're presumably about to pass, when we take into account Alderman Sexton's addition, which I think is valuable, that it's put to the government in such a way that allows the government to say this is our grand plan, because economically we cannot survive without the rest of the nation. Economically, we'll be cast adrift exactly as people have said. But again, we have one advantage that I suspect most other cities in Tasmania and towns in Tasmania don't have. We have the statistics, we have the data, and I think we also have the trust, ladies and gentlemen, of the community, of the business community, because for a large degree, those 900, 1,200 interactions that have been taking place at an officer level have put us in a position where the community sees us as a player, and I think that's really valuable. So thank you.
Okay, I'll just go around on the substantive motion. Deputy Lord Mayor.
For Lord Mayor.
Alderman Zuko.
For Lord Mayor.
Alderman Briscoe.
For Lord Mayor.
Alderman Sexton.
For Lord Mayor.
Alderman Thomas.
For.
Councillor Harvey.
For.
Alderman Barakis.
For.
Councillor Dutta. Oh, sorry, Councillor Dutta's not here. Councillor Ewan.
For.
Councillor Sherlock.
For.
Councillor Coates.
For Lord Mayor.
And I'll vote for reluctantly, only because of item 5. Okay, thank you. That's unanimous. So we're now at the end of our open portion of the meeting, and it's someone.
We've got the
Sorry, we've got supplementaries. Sorry, yeah. Okay, so we've got item 17, moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Sherlock. This is to receive a note. Would anyone like to, Alderman Zuko? You'd like to speak?
Yes, Lord Mayor, I'd just like to make a very brief statement, if I may. Thank you. At the council meeting on the 8th of July 2019, there were 5 elected members who stood up and spoke up against racism. All 5 delivering virtually the same message about racism, some more forthright than others, but the same message was conveyed. Former Alderman Dennison was distraught in tears after a verbal attack as she spoke. Seeing Alderman Dennison in such a state was quite disturbing on that night. Ironically, of those 5 who spoke out, 2 were subject to code of conduct complaints. I'd like to say that I would stand up yet again with the other 4 elected members to condemn any form of racism, and I will always condemn racism in a forthright manner, no matter what. The council, I believe, must also review its policy on racism. As this matter is in the hands of lawyers, there is nothing more I can say at this point in time.
Okay, Alderman Barakis.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll have more to say on the broader issue when the next item comes up. But I'll just wanted to touch on something, given I'm sure everyone's seen the some of the commentary that's come out and how our email inboxes have been flooded with standard emails. Just on page 9 of the determination, there's a section that says Hobart Not High Rise is a lobby group which actively participated in the Welcome Stranger public debate, and its website did carry information about the national backgrounds of the proponents of the development in the form of an ASIC company search, etc., etc., etc. That was obviously one of the concerns, and that was one of the reasons that the determination was made. But it also goes on to say the panel cannot find it says, while Alderman Zuko's interpretation of the material on Hobart Not High Rise's website differs from that of Mr. Kaur, it is expected that as an elected member, Alderman Zuko will attempt to sway others to his point of view. The panel cannot find that his attempt to do so was improper, contrary to part 3-2 of the code in that panel, and cannot be satisfied that there was any fraud, deceitfulness, or dishonesty on the part of Alderman Zuko. Lord Mayor, the suggestions that have been made publicly since the determination that there should be a recommitting of the vote on height limits because Alderman Zuko's the determination that Alderman Zuko was in breach of the code of conduct renders the vote invalid because of the suggestion that some councillors or aldermen may have been improperly influenced is, I think, quite absurd. I think it's quite appalling, and I think it's just another sign of the issues.
Point of order, Lord Mayor. Point of order, Lord Mayor.
Yes, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Lord Mayor, this is not relevant to the matter at hand, which is a code of conduct panel deliberation and decision.
Lord Mayor, it's directly relevant because I'm quoting directly from the code of conduct panel and the issues that are out of it.
I think Alderman Brackus, if you can just focus on the report, maybe, and less about the sort of matters today, I guess, is the concern.
Look,
but
sure. Well, look, I think the comments that I've made and the recent rhetoric about the emails and the what's included in this report, I think do show one of the serious issues in the code of conduct process as a whole. And I'll speak on that again on my item. But there is very much, I think, a trend, and I think there's maybe one or two exceptions to the rule, that the code of conduct currently is effectively being exercised purely as a weapon for the people to attack political opponents or those with whom they disagree. I think it really needs to be looked at, and I think this determination, as well as the complaint against myself, is a good example of that.
Okay, so I'll put the item that the report be received and noted. Would anyone like to vote against that? Okay, there's no hands raised, so we'll that one's declared unanimously. Moving on to item 18. Moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Sherlock. Another one to receive and note. Alderman Brackus.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And look, it's both relieving and vindicating to have been cleared of some of these complaints that were put against me by Mr. Kaur and by Hobart Not High Rise. Ultimately, what this whole thing's come down to, and what the whole point of this has been, if there is a point of this, is that what debate happened and what rhetoric happened during the course of the height limit debate or the Welcome Stranger debate or all the ancillary stuff that came around that was political debate. It may have been quite robust political debate at some points, and I'll concede to that. But it was political debate, and for a member of the public, obviously he's the head of as the Code of Conduct panel has categorised him or defined it as a lobby group, because that's ultimately what they are. For someone to jump into that pond of political debate, you can't jump in and not get wet. You can't enter into the political debate, say all the things that you want to say, and then if somebody tries to exercise a reply, oh, cry foul, oh, I'm being hard done by because they've said something mean to me. It's like, that's not how this works. That's not how political debate works. And ultimately, that's the determination that the Code of Conduct panel said. And once again, I think this does really, really highlight the serious concerns that I have with the code of conduct process as a whole. I think it's, as it stands, I think it is absolutely destined to be continuously weaponized by political activists to attack or to get retribution on those with whom they have disagreements. I think we've seen that with this complaint, with the complaint against Alderman Zuko that we just received and noted. We saw it with the complaints that happened down in the Huonville Council. You know, it's a common trend, and it's the same kind of people that put in these repeated complaints. I think it's something that needs to be really, really addressed on a legislative level. I think the government needs to actually take a solid, hard look at this, and I would hope that when the Local Government Act review comes before Parliament, when it does come before Parliament, it's something that they'd be considering, because ultimately, you know, if somebody says something that's defamatory or deliberately misleading, there are defamation laws to cover that. If someone breaches or says or distributes confidential information without authorization, or it gets caught misusing a position of authority, there are laws, already laws in the Local Government Act, but there are laws that cover that sort of thing. If somebody takes exception to something that a member of council said publicly that they take exception to or they feel was inappropriate, that's a question for the ballot box. That's the same thing that the same standard that parliaments are held by. If anything, parliaments have it better because they have parliamentary privilege. But what the current code of conduct does is, what the current code of conduct does is put local government representatives, whether they're councillors or aldermen, in a situation where they can't have a frank and open and honest debate over an issue out of fear of political retribution. As it stands, the code of conduct process limits our ability to do our jobs as we were elected to do, which is to debate issues relevant to our constituency and to engage in these things honestly and openly. That's the reason why parliamentary privilege exists in the Parliament, and I'm not necessarily suggesting we have that as well. But we need to be able to talk about issues frankly and honestly without fear of retribution. And I think that there's a lot of people that might be interested in serving in local government that have been turned away because of the unnecessary headaches and the harassment that they see people getting in the form of code of conduct complaints. And look, I'm not claiming the woe is me, because I think there's some people that have had it worse with this and have had multiple complaints, such as McNeil down in Huonville, and I think many of them have been exceptionally frivolous. And, you know, we can all have the talk about whether or not it's appropriate to hand out minties in a council chamber, but that might be a topic for another day. But look, ultimately, 30
seconds, Alderman Brackus.
Now I'll sum up. Ultimately, once again, I think that these two complaints just highlight the politicisation of this whole process. I'm glad that I'm clear of it. I'm quite disappointed by the termination against Alderman Zuko, but I'll leave it at that.
Alderman, Councillor Harvey.
Lord Mayor, the lesson here is that words matter, and we've got to be really careful how we refer to people, and we can't use derogatory language. That, you know, the words fascist and racist, I think, are really strong words that we need to be really cautious about using, because it does lead to episodes like this where councillors are found to have, well, the accusations have been upheld on some regards, but also not upheld on other regards. We've just got to be careful.
Yes, Alderman Brackus.
Just out of relevance, is Councillor Harvey talking about the determination against myself or Alderman Zuko? Because I was cleared and I never said anything such as racist.
That's right. Yeah,
Okay.
what I'm
possibly should have
is a general comment. We had some general comments from Councillor Barakis about the validity of codes of conduct and about having comparing the right to say what you want in Parliament versus we have no protection in local government. But I think we've still got to be careful about how we refer to people, the language we use, because it does end up in these codes of conduct. And a question for the General Manager, these two codes of conduct, which came as a result of language used by aldermen, have ended up costing the council a great deal of money and potentially could have been avoided with a bit more considered effort in making comments. So could I just get an indicative cost from the General Manager of how much these 2 codes of conduct cases have cost the council?
Well, the council will be sent an account by the Code of Conduct panel for conducting the hearings. I think a previous piece of advice we've given to the council is that they're about $3,500 per hearing.
And can I also inquire if there's any sort of appeal with these cases? Does the council cover the appeal costs?
Lord Mayor, the council has a policy around what's called legal reimbursements.
Mm-hmm.
That policy says if you're acting as a applicant or a plaintiff, then you've got to seek the consent of the council to underwrite the costs. So I'm not aware of any request to the council at this point, other than I think the policy does allow for some preliminary legal advice to be obtained.
Okay, thank you, GM.
I can see a hand up from Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I just want to make a couple of comments. I mean, it's all very well to complain about a process. It is a process that we do have in place, and we sign a form to abide by specific codes of conduct, abiding by the code of conduct, and upholding the position that we are fortunate to have. So to complain about a current process, I think has some flaws. I believe that we as elected representatives, no matter what might be thrown at us by the public, have a standard that we should be that the community expect of us in our behaviour. Now, we do have the Integrity Commission, we do have this code of conduct, and there is laws in relation to the Local Government Act and other laws that we are beholden to as members of the community ourselves. So it's unfortunate there has been this dropping of the ball in relation to our and there must be some sort of reflection on the council with this interrelationship with the community and elected members. I think we should remember that there is respect of community members. There is respect of each other, and it's quite a good time when we're looking at codes of conduct determinations that we reflect and think about what this means for our council. Nobody likes being in battle, locking horns time and time again. And I know that I've been through a code of conduct many years ago, which was found against me. But I learned from that process. I would hope that others do learn from this process as well.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, if there's no further discussion, I will see if everyone brings their hand down. I'll see, would anyone like to vote against the receiving and noting of this report? Okay, there's no votes against, so that's passed unanimously. We now have completed our open meeting, and I'll ask Deputy Lord Mayor's moved that we move into the close, seconded by Councillor Harvey. Anyone against moving into the closed, please raise your hand. Okay, there's no hands closed, that's passed. Thank you for anyone who's watching, and we're now moving into the closed portion of our meeting. Thank you, good night.